And a good Sunday morning to you, Roger Hill of Wuthering Heights. This weather video is driven by 802cars.com. They represent 802 Toyota, Twin Cities Subaru, and 802 Honda, all located off of Exit 7 on Interstate 89. Looking at hyperlapse from the drone, the formation of the fog, and its obvious changes from the higher elevations locations. No utility impacts are expected this period. One main rain event will work in, it looks like later tonight, Sunday night, with a pretty healthy soaker arriving late Sunday into Monday night. Most of this will fall during the daytime on Monday. Thereafter, dry project weather will develop courtesy of strengthening high pressure. This will last from Tuesday into Friday of this work week. Best solar output days are likely to be Tuesday and again on Friday due to some low clouds and occasionally some high, thin cirrus clouds. No gradient winds are anticipated, nor any thunderstorms, nor any snowfall issues at this time. Climatology this time of year brings increasingly stronger gradient wind events and dust-ups of mountain snow to our local mountaintops. And that usually takes place roughly about this time of year and of course, into November and December and beyond. But it is currently not advertised. We have one big weather system. This is the area of low pressure that's in the upper levels as well as the mid-levels and surface area of low pressure as well. This is just south of Hudson Bay, Canada. A ridge developing in the west, and this is going to be pushing and scooping up a lot of moisture with kind of a stringy frontal system. We'll take a look at that first with the precipitable water. And we have precipitable water being shown here, and you can see that we're starting to get to 1 to 2 standard deviation sigma. And it starts to increase as this stringy frontal boundary kind of stalls out during the overnight period, Sunday night into Monday morning. And you can see just some slightly enhanced 2, almost 3 sigma that's kind of working on through. That's in the morning hours, and then it works its way out and continually shifts off to the south and east. That opens the door for an area of higher pressure to build back into the region with those anomalies showing below normal precipitation and precipitable water possibilities and drier than normal conditions. And you'll see that this is just a kind of a big blocking area of higher pressure. That's a real good signature. You can see the area of higher pressure is very strong here. It'll force a weather system that will develop underneath that area of higher pressure to the south. And some of that moisture tries to make a run at us, but this doesn't really happen until we get into the weekend. You can see how that all kind of fans out here. And this may actually become a extratropical or subtropical weather system off the just about due east of Cape Hatteras, with a large area of moisture working in next weekend, but that's way down the road. So we're going to start out the 6 hourly panels of the European model showing precipitation types, and of course green means rain, and you can see a little bit of that is working in toward the afternoon hours, relatively light. This is our frontal boundary kind of sets up. This is valid at about 8 o'clock in the evening on Monday, and then that precipitation begins to push on south. An area of higher pressure builds in, and that's going to be the name of the game. 1029 hectopascals here, 1031 there, 1034. So this is a building area of higher pressure, really putting the block as it looks right now on this system. And keeping this system in mind, we're going to have some really nice dry project weather. Again, best solar days probably running on Tuesday as well as Friday, but we're looking at very dry project weather through this entire period. Keeping an eye on that system to our south, we finally get in a little bit of precipitation. This doesn't happen until we get into the later in the day on Saturday night, and then eventually on Sunday we'll be on this period. Looks like our snows or temperatures aloft cold enough to produce snow is going to remain off to the north of and west of the Great Lakes. And no worries and no indications at this point in time for any major issues there, although it is getting into that climatological period. Okay, centered on Montpelier, Vermont, we have the GFS ensemble. It uses also a little bit of the Canadian model as well. And we have our weather system here, our big rain event. This is showing 3 hourly QPF. And you can see after this moves on by, then a pretty good dry period. There's the next little issue coming down the road here quite a ways out. Looking at the total amount of precipitation, The total QPF looks like this. So we're running about 1.5. The most recent model run is taking that down from the center line here, and so the trend is slightly less, but the European and the GFS model are in very, very good agreement with this. Let's look at precipitable water, the PWATS, the GFS ensemble. Again, this is centered on Montpelier, Vermont. You can see roughly about 1.4 inches, and this is available moisture if it was all squeezed out. And that's kind of where we're looking at right now, anywhere from about as little as 3/4 of an inch expected to as much as perhaps maybe as much as 2 inches in a few spots. The best chances for that across mainly central Vermont, maybe a little bit more southerly Vermont oriented. The heavier rains we've received recently across the northern part of Vermont looks like it's going to be on the edge, but it could be still susceptible to some issues. But again, it's more central and southern Vermont oriented with this particular frontal boundary, as that precipitable water kind of shows that with somewhere around, 2 to 3 sigma standard deviation. In terms of temperatures, this is a 850 hectopascal level about the top of Mount Mansfield. This is the 0-degree center line, so this is all rain all the time. No temperatures cold enough for any kind of precipitation in the form of snow, so that's all good news there. And looking at 850 wind hectopascal. Wind gusts in the higher terrain, we're kind of coming out of that right now, so no real issues with gradient winds through this entire period as well. 2-meter temperatures also show kind of a standard issue here, running pretty close to near normal for this time of year. If anything, just a slight trend upward as we head into the next several days ahead. So some pretty good weather here, and again, running near normal to slightly above normal as indicated. QPF, the 7-day total precipitation forecast predicted by the Weather Prediction Center, shows the blue line here. This is roughly 1 inch amounts. This is 1.5 inches. So southern New England a little bit better on the storm track here. Northern areas just a little bit out of that 1 inch amount, and you can see 0.25 of an inch in a drier than normal area here, as that stringy frontal boundary will kind of be stationary for a time with a wave, and then it eventually pulls off to the south and east, as I showed you on the European model. And we're not looking too bad in terms of temperature as well. You can see we're running about 0 or neutral to about 3 degrees above normal, and about 3 days later, very similar conditions. A little bit of a warming trend here. We see much colder air working into the western part of the northern Rockies, the northern plains, and this is the area that's also going to get hammered with some additional snowfall, with another pretty good snowfall setting up a little bit later on this week. Climate Reanalyzer shows pretty much kind of par for the course. We have Arctic amplification taking place across the high Arctic region, high latitude, with some blocking taking place. Look how warm it is with Greenland. We have colder than normal temperatures that have kind of scooted along the western Pacific coast into the western half of the country. This is going to intensify, and if anything, we're going to see slightly warmer conditions begin to develop and push northeast as this little colder blob begins to push east as well. Looking at the tropics, we have one area here. It's about just a 10% chance. Now, as we get over in time, though, this is a little bit more important. We have about a 30% chance of cyclone formation. This would be a subtropical low off the eastern seaboard. We talked about that a little earlier. And about a 50% chance of something forming along that skinny frontal boundary right here. So that's going to be in play. The system we're going to have to watch, though, is south of that blocking area of higher pressure, which would have a tendency to move north and then perhaps hook left. So something we'll have to keep a close eye on. That's about it. Roger Hill, Wuthering Heights. Thanks for watching.